Imagine holding a book so ancient, so powerful, that legend claims it was written not by human hands but by the heavens themselves. Hidden within its pages, the secrets of the universe, the wisdom of the gods, and the fate of empires. This isn't just a story, it's the mystery of the Jade Books of Heaven, a set of divine texts whispered about for centuries in Chinese mythology, said to hold knowledge beyond mortal comprehension. But here's the twist: no one knows if they ever truly existed. Were they real, or were they merely a myth, a tantalizing tale passed down through generations? And if they were real, where did they go? For centuries, scholars and treasure hunters alike have been obsessed with uncovering the truth behind these enigmatic texts. The Jade Books of Heaven aren't just relics of the past, they're a puzzle, one that blurs the line between history and legend. Some say they contained celestial maps guiding emperors to divine favor. Others believe they held prophecies so potent that merely reading them could alter destiny. But the most chilling theory, that they were hidden or destroyed because their power was too dangerous to remain in the hands of men. What if I told you that the search for these lost books isn't just about uncovering an ancient artifact? It's a journey into the heart of human curiosity, a quest to understand how myths shape our world. Today, we're diving deep into the shadows of history, unraveling the threads of this mystery piece by piece. From the whispers of imperial courts to the cryptic clues left behind in forgotten texts, we'll explore every angle of this legend. By the end, you might just find yourself questioning where the line between myth and reality truly lies, and wondering what other secrets the past is still keeping from us. So, are you ready to step into the unknown? Let's begin. The story of the Jade Books begins where heaven and earth meet, in the swirling mists of Chinese mythology, where gods walked among mortals and secrets of the cosmos were whispered to the worthy. According to ancient Taoist texts, these weren't ordinary manuscripts. They were celestial gifts etched onto tablets of jade, a stone revered for its purity and connection to the divine. Imagine the scene: a ruler kneeling before the heavens, receiving not just a book but a mandate, because that's what these texts supposedly were, a divine endorsement of power, a cosmic blueprint for ruling with wisdom. But who or what bestowed them? Legends point to the Jade Emperor himself, the supreme deity of Taoism, or perhaps the Yellow Emperor, the mythical progenitor of Chinese civilization. Some accounts describe the books descending from the sky in a radiant glow carried by celestial messengers. Others claim they were unearthed from sacred mountains, hidden until the chosen emperor proved worthy. Either way, their origins were never human. They were artifacts of the divine, filled with star charts, rituals, and prophecies meant to guide rulers in harmonizing heaven and earth. The allure of the Jade Books wasn't just their supernatural origins, it was their promise. In a world where emperors derived their authority from the mandate of heaven, possessing these texts was the ultimate validation. They were said to contain the very laws of the universe, the secrets of immortality, and the keys to maintaining cosmic order. Lose them and chaos could follow. Hide them and dynasties might rise or fall based on their absence. Yet here's the haunting question: why would something so powerful vanish? Some scholars argue they were never physical to begin with, metaphors for heavenly wisdom, not literal books. But others point to cryptic references in imperial records, like the Han Dynasty's obsession with recovering lost jade tablets. Could these have been the fabled texts tucked away in a tomb or destroyed in rebellion? The mystery only deepens when you consider how often power and secrecy intertwine in history. What's undeniable is how the legend endured. Centuries later, Taoist sages still spoke of the Jade Books in hushed tones, and emperors commissioned elaborate replicas, hoping to capture even a fraction of their power. Maybe that's the true magic of this myth, not whether the books existed, but how fiercely people believed they did. And in that belief, empires were built, wars were waged, and history was written. So the next time you hear a whisper about divine knowledge, ask yourself, is it the book that holds the power or the desperate hunger of those who seek it? Tracing the footsteps of the Jade Books means sifting through ancient texts where myth and history blur. One of the earliest references appears in the Shangshu, or Book of Documents, a cornerstone of Chinese classical literature dating back over 2,000 years. Here, the texts are described as heavenly ordinances, inscribed on jade and bestowed upon sage rulers like Yao and Shun figures revered as model emperors. But the details are tantalizingly vague. Were these ordinances physical books or symbolic decrees from the heavens? The Shangshu doesn't clarify, leaving room for centuries of debate. Other records add to the puzzle. The Bamboo Annals, a chronicle of early China, mentions a set of green jade tablets presented to the Yellow Emperor, a story echoing the Shangshu but with a twist. These tablets reportedly contained star maps and divination methods, suggesting a practical, almost scientific purpose. Yet when later dynasties like the Han tried to locate them, they found only fragments and conflicting accounts. Some scholars dismissed the books as allegory, while imperial courts poured resources into recovering them, convinced their power was real. The contradictions multiply when you compare regional variations. In Taoist scriptures, the Jade Books are celestial manuals detailing rituals to commune with gods. But in Confucian texts, they're framed as moral compasses guiding rulers to virtuous governance. This divergence raises a fascinating question. Did different traditions reinvent the legend to suit their own philosophies? Or was there a core truth, a lost artifact that each interpreted differently? Perhaps the most intriguing clue comes from the Shiji, the grand historian Sima Qian's masterpiece. He writes of Emperor Wu of Han sacrificing mountains of jade in rituals to recover lost heavenly texts. But here's the catch. Sima Qian, a skeptic, implies the emperor's obsession might have been political theater, a way to legitimize his reign. This duality runs through every historical mention. The books are simultaneously revered and doubted, their existence a tool for both faith and control. What emerges isn't just a trail of fragments, but a pattern. Every era reinvented the Jade Books to mirror its anxieties and ambitions. For some, they were divine contracts, for others, propaganda. And that's the real mystery, not whether the books existed, but why they haunted the imagination of empires for millennia. When history and legend share the same page, sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones written in jade, but the ones we choose to believe. The Jade Books weren't just objects of reverence, they were cosmic contracts binding heaven and earth in a delicate balance. Imagine possessing a text so profound that it didn't just advise rulers, it dictated the very rhythm of existence. According to ancient accounts, these books contained 3 layers of divine purpose. They legitimized power, foretold destiny, and unlocked wisdom beyond human grasp. For an emperor, holding them wasn't just about authority, it was proof that the heavens themselves had chosen him. The mandate of heaven, that sacred principle justifying rule, wasn't just an idea, it was thought to be physically etched into these jade tablets, a tangible symbol of divine favor. Lose them, and you might lose the right to govern, but their power went deeper than politics. Hidden within their pages were prophecies so precise they allegedly mapped the rise and fall of dynasties. Think of it as an ancient algorithm of fate, celestial warnings about floods, rebellions, even the lifespan of empires. Some legends say the books predicted the fall of the Qin dynasty centuries before it crumbled, or foresaw the golden age of the Tang. If true, this wasn't just foresight, it was a cheat code for rulership. Emperors who sought the books weren't just chasing prestige, they were desperate to read the scroll of their own futures. Then there's the third layer, the secrets of the cosmos. The Jade Books supposedly held star charts aligning with sacred mountains, rituals to summon rain or halt disasters, and even alchemical formulas for immortality. Taoist mystics whispered of passages teaching how to ride the clouds or commune with deities. This wasn't just mythology, it was a user manual for harmonizing the human world with the celestial one. Why were they considered sacred? Because they blurred the line between the mortal and the divine. In a world where nature's wrath, droughts, earthquakes were seen as heaven's displeasure, these texts offered control. They weren't just books, they were a direct hotline to the gods, and that's what makes their disappearance so haunting. If they held the keys to stability, why vanish? Some say they were too dangerous, that their knowledge in the wrong hands could unravel the universe. Others believe they were never meant to stay in one place, moving like mist between dynasties, appearing only when heaven decreed. The irony is crushing. The very texts meant to anchor empires became shadows, their absence fueling more obsession than their presence ever could. Maybe that's the ultimate lesson of the Jade Books. Sometimes the most powerful artifacts aren't the ones we hold, but the ones we spend lifetimes chasing. Picture a book not bound by leather or paper, but carved from luminous jade. Each page a polished slab of green stone veined with whispers of the divine. The Jade Books of Heaven weren't just written, they were manifested, their surfaces etched with script that shimmered like trapped starlight. Ancient texts describe characters forged not in ink, but in gold or celestial light, their strokes glowing as if lit from within. Some accounts claim the writing shifted when viewed, rearranging itself to reveal hidden meanings to the worthy, a language alive with cosmic secrets. The very material of these books was a message. Jade wasn't chosen for its beauty alone. In Chinese tradition, it symbolized purity, immortality, and the bridge between heaven and earth. To hold a jade tablet was to touch the divine, its cool surface believed to pulse with the rhythm of the cosmos, and the golden script that was no mere decoration. Gold represented the unchanging, the eternal, its luminance mirroring the radiance of the gods themselves. Together, jade and gold formed a sacred dialect, a physical code declaring these texts were not of this world. But the descriptions grow even more mysterious. Some legends speak of the books emitting a faint hum, a harmonic resonance when touched by those with heaven's favor. Others insist the tablets were weightless, defying the laws of nature, or that they hovered just above the hands of emperors during rituals. And then there were the guardians. Celestial beings, dragons with eyes of pearl, phoenixes with feathers of flame, allegedly watched over the texts, vanishing into mist if unworthy hands drew near. These weren't just books on a shelf, they were artifacts alive with energy, demanding reverence. The symbolism runs deeper. Jade's toughness mirrored the unyielding will of heaven's mandates, while its smooth surface reflected the clarity of divine truth. Even the book's size held meaning. Some sources describe them as impossibly slender, fitting in the palm yet containing infinite knowledge, a paradox echoing the Taoist belief that the vastest truths hide in the smallest details. Every aspect of their design whispered the same lesson. True power isn't loud, it's subtle, enduring, and utterly beyond mortal craft. So were they real objects or elaborate metaphors? Perhaps both. The descriptions are too consistent across centuries to dismiss as pure fantasy, yet too miraculous to fit neatly into history. Maybe that's the point. The Jade Books weren't meant to be understood, only believed in. And in that belief they became more than relics. They became mirrors, reflecting humanity's endless yearning to hold the divine in our hands, even if it slips through our fingers like mist. The relationship between Chinese emperors and the Jade Books reads like a dance of power and desperation, a centuries-long saga of rulers grasping for divine legitimacy. Take the mythical Yellow Emperor Huangdi, often called the progenitor of Chinese civilization. Legends claim he didn't just possess the Jade Books, he communed with them. Ancient texts describe him ascending sacred Mount Kunlun, where celestial beings granted him the texts as a blueprint for governance. But here's the twist: Huangdi didn't hoard them. He's said to have shared their wisdom, using their star charts to align his kingdom with the heavens and their rituals to heal droughts. Was he a keeper or a conduit? The ambiguity is deliberate. In myth, he's both a ruler who didn't just wield the books but served them, their secrets flowing through him like a vessel for divine will. Fast forward to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, and the tone shifts dramatically. This was a man obsessed with control, infamous for burning books and burying scholars alive to consolidate power. Yet, paradoxically, he's also tied to the Jade Books, not as a keeper but as a frantic seeker. Records suggest he sent expeditions to sacred mountains, searching for jade tablets of the immortals. Why would a ruler who suppressed knowledge chase these texts? Because their promise outweighed his tyranny. Qin Shi Huang didn't want wisdom, he wanted immortality. The Jade Books, with their rumored alchemical secrets, represented his last hope to cheat death. His desperation reveals a darker truth. The books weren't just tools of governance. They were mirrors reflecting each emperor's deepest obsessions, whether order, longevity, or sheer dominance. Then there's Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty, whose reign became a theater of celestial theatrics. He built elaborate altars, performed costly jade sacrifices, and even reshaped his capital's layout to mimic star constellations, all to lure the Jade Books back into human hands. But Wu's quest wasn't just spiritual, it was political. After years of upheaval, the Han Dynasty needed divine validation. The books, if recovered, would cement his legitimacy. Historians note the irony. Wu's rituals grew more extravagant as the books remained elusive, a cycle of diminishing returns. His court scribes, perhaps sensing the futility, began writing of the texts as metaphorical, a shift that hints at a quiet surrender. The Jade Books, once tangible, were fading into metaphor, becoming tools of propaganda rather than objects of power. What unites these emperors isn't just their pursuit of the texts, but their failure to truly master them. The Yellow Emperor's connection was symbiotic. Later rulers treated them as trophies or talismans, and that's the crux. The Jade Books thrived in the realm of the unattainable. Once an emperor claimed to possess them, their magic dissolved. The moment Qin Shi Huang's alchemists failed to produce immortality, or Wu's priests couldn't conjure the books, the illusion cracked. The text's true power lay in their absence, a perpetual carrot dangling before kings, compelling them to act in ways that echoed divine order, if only to prove they deserved what they could never quite hold. Perhaps that's why the legend endured. The Jade Books were the ultimate litmus test for rulers. Those who respected their mystery, like Huangdi, were revered. Those who tried to own them, like Qin Shi Huang, became cautionary tales. In the end, the books weren't just about what they contained, but what they demanded: humility in the face of the unknowable. And that's a lesson even emperors struggled to learn. The vanishing of the Jade Books is a mystery wrapped in layers of contradiction, where history ends and speculation begins. One persistent theory suggests they were never lost at all, but deliberately concealed by emperors who feared their power could destabilize dynasties if made public. Imagine a ruler inheriting texts that could predict rebellions or reveal celestial weaknesses. Would sharing that knowledge not invite chaos? Ancient records hint at secret vaults beneath palaces, where only the most trusted advisors could access the books under heavy guard. The Tang dynasty's imperial archives, for instance, reportedly contained a jade chamber accessible only after days of purification rituals. But when later scholars searched these sites, they found empty niches, as if the books had been spirited away moments before discovery. Another thread points to destruction. The Qin dynasty's infamous book burnings targeted texts threatening central authority, and while Confucian classics were their primary victims, some Taoist scholars whispered that the Jade Books were casualties too, melted down for their precious materials or shattered to prevent rivals from wielding their power. Yet this theory stumbles on a paradox. If the books were truly indestructible, as legends claim, how could fire or force erase them? Unless, of course, their disappearance was part of a celestial design. This leads to the most haunting explanation. The books return to the heavens. Folktales describe sudden storms or beams of light heralding their departure, as if the gods had merely loaned them to humanity for a time. A Ming Dynasty Taoist text recounts how an emperor, after misusing the book's rituals, awoke to find them gone, replaced by a single jade shard engraved with a warning about hubris. Could their vanishing act have been a divine rebuke, a reminder that some knowledge wasn't meant to linger in mortal hands? But perhaps the most unsettling theory is that the books never existed as physical objects at all. Later dynasties, particularly the Song, began treating them as metaphors, symbols of ideal governance rather than tangible relics. Emperors commissioned jade replicas for ceremonial use, blurring the line between artifact and allegory. Historians debate whether this shift reflected genuine disbelief or a tactical retreat. Admitting the books were lost risked undermining the mandate of heaven, while redefining them as philosophy preserved their symbolic power. What ties these threads together is their shared undercurrent of unease. Whether hidden, destroyed, or reclaimed, the Jade Books' absence served a purpose. It kept the myth alive. Like a dormant seed, their legend could adapt to any era's needs, invoked to justify rebellions, inspire art, or humble tyrants. Their disappearance wasn't an end, but a transformation. And that may be their final secret. The most enduring power isn't possession, but the void left behind, an eternal invitation to search, to wonder, and to believe. Archaeologists and treasure hunters have scoured China for centuries, chasing whispers of the Jade Books. Every so often, a discovery ignites hope. A fragment of jade etched with strange symbols, a tomb rumored to hold celestial artifacts. But each lead dissolves like mist. Take the famous case from the 1980s when workers digging near Xi'an unearthed a cache of jade tablets. The carvings bore markings unlike any known script, and for a brief, thrilling moment, scholars dared to wonder if they'd found a piece of the legend. But further testing revealed the tablets were funeral objects from the Tang dynasty, their symbols funerary prayers, not divine knowledge. Dead end. Then there's the Temple of the Azure Cloud in Beijing, where monks once guarded a jade codex said to hum when touched. 19th century explorers documented it, even sketched its swirling glyphs, but the codex vanished during the Boxer Rebellion. Was it looted, destroyed? Or had it never been there at all? The only record left is a missionary's diary describing how the monks smiled cryptically when asked about its origins, murmuring, "Heaven takes back what heaven gives." The most compelling and frustrating clues come from imperial tombs. Emperors like Wu of Han were buried with jade artifacts meant to guide them to immortality, some inscribed with celestial maps. In 2008, archaeologists opening a sealed chamber in the Mawangdui site found a lacquer box containing thin jade slips. The excitement was palpable until experts realized the slips were astrological records, not prophetic texts. Close, but not the divine library they'd hoped for. So why has no physical evidence ever matched the legend? Some argue it's because the books weren't meant to be found. Jade, though durable, can be recarved, melted down, or buried so deeply it becomes part of the earth. Others suggest the books were never singular objects, but scattered fragments like the Rosetta Stone, but dispersed across dynasties. A Song dynasty scholar once theorized that the books were actually a system of oral teachings, later mythologized into physical form. Perhaps the truth lies in the nature of the search itself. The Jade Books aren't just artifacts, they're a mirror held up to our hunger for the transcendent. Every failed excavation, every near miss feeds the myth. Because sometimes the greatest mysteries aren't the ones we solve, they're the ones that keep us searching, and in that endless pursuit, the legend lives on. The Jade Books didn't just promise power, they held the keys to eternity itself. In Taoist alchemy, where the pursuit of immortality was as much spiritual as it was scientific, these texts were revered as the ultimate manuals, their jade pages said to contain recipes for elixirs capable of defying death. But this wasn't about mere potions or chemical formulas. The alchemy described in the Jade Books operated on a cosmic scale, blending the physical and the metaphysical into a single, shimmering truth. Taoist adepts believed the universe was a matrix of interconnected energies, and the books supposedly mapped how to harness them. One legend describes a passage detailing the ninefold elixir, a substance not concocted in a cauldron, but cultivated within the practitioner's own body through breath, meditation, and ritual. The ingredients, not gold or cinnabar alone, but virtues like compassion and stillness, ingredients no mortal furnace could replicate. This was alchemy as transformation, where refining the self mirrored the purification of base metals into gold. The Jade Books in this light weren't cookbooks, they were mirrors reflecting the alchemist's own journey toward enlightenment, yet the practical side was just as tantalizing. Historical records from the Tang dynasty mention emperors funding elaborate laboratories to recreate recipes, as described in the celestial jade records. These weren't metaphorical endeavors. Workers labored over furnaces day and night, melting minerals, distilling dew from sacred peaks, and chanting incantations to align their work with the stars. The irony, the closer they got to replicating the texts, the more elusive immortality became. One account tells of an alchemist who, after decades of study, claimed to have decoded a single page, only to vanish into a beam of light, leaving behind a half-finished elixir that turned to jade upon contact with air. The duality of the Jade Books in alchemy reveals a deeper tension. Were they guides to physical immortality or metaphors for the soul's ascent? The answer might lie in between. Taoist masters often spoke of inner alchemy, where the body became the laboratory and enlightenment the true elixir. The book's descriptions of drinking moonlight or swallowing the aurora could be read as poetic instructions for meditation, visualizing celestial energy flowing through the body. Even the jade itself held meaning, its cool, unyielding surface symbolizing the perfected state of a sage, untouched by decay. Perhaps the most compelling evidence of their alchemical role comes from their absence. When the books vanished, so too did the most audacious experiments in immortality. Later dynasties shifted focus, replacing elixirs with ethical governance as the path to eternal legacy. The Jade Books' legacy in alchemy, then, isn't just about what they contained, but what they inspired. A 1,000-year quest to conquer the limits of human existence. And in that quest, they achieved a kind of immortality after all, not for the emperors who sought them, but for the legend itself, forever eluding grasp, forever beckoning. The legend of the Jade Books finds echoes in sacred texts across cultures, tomes said to bridge the human and divine. Take the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, a cornerstone of Western alchemy. Like the Jade Books, it's attributed to a celestial source, its cryptic maxim, as above, so below, mirroring the Taoist harmony of heaven and earth. But while the Emerald Tablet distills cosmic truths into a single, enigmatic formula, the Jade Books sprawled as a living library, their contents shifting with the needs of each dynasty. Where Hermes' text speaks in universal riddles, the Jade Books rooted divinity in the soil of empire, less a philosophy than a manual for ruling with the gods' approval. Then there's the Hindu Vedas, hymns channeled by ancient seers in a state of divine revelation. Both texts share the aura of unearthly origin, but the Vedas were meant to be heard, their power unleashed through recitation. The Jade Books, by contrast, were tactile objects to be held, their jade surfaces grounding celestial wisdom in physical form. The Vedas flow like a river of sound, the Jade Books stand as mountains, immutable and silent until the worthy draw near. What sets the Jade Books apart is their role as political instruments. The Jewish Torah's stone tablets handed to Moses on Sinai established moral law, but the Jade Books calibrated the mandate of heaven itself. They didn't just guide rulers, they validated their right to rule. Imagine the Rosetta Stone fused with the Book of Revelation, its verses dictating not just spiritual truth but the fate of nations. Even the Egyptian Book of the Dead, for all its funerary grandeur, served private passage to the afterlife, whereas the Jade Books pulsed through the bloodstream of empires, their loss or recovery tipping the scales of history. Perhaps the closest parallel lies in the Arthurian Grail legends. Both the Grail and the Jade Books shimmer just beyond reach, their seekers forever changed by the quest rather than the prize. But where the Grail symbolizes individual purity, the Jade Books measured a civilization's worth. Their uniqueness isn't just in their form or origin, but in their function. They were the ultimate litmus test for whether a kingdom deserved to stand beneath heaven's gaze. While other divine texts revealed cosmic truths, the Jade Books held something far more dangerous: the power to judge them. The Jade Books weren't confined to shadowy myths, they were centerpieces of imperial pageantry, woven into the very rituals that crowned emperors and consecrated dynasties. Picture the scene: a new ruler kneeling beneath a canopy of silk, the air thick with incense, as priests unsealed a casket said to hold a fragment of the celestial text. Even if the books themselves remained unseen, their presence was palpable, invoked like a spectral guest of honor. These ceremonies weren't mere formalities, they were high-stakes theater where the illusion of divine favor could make or break a reign. The mandate of heaven wasn't just an idea, it was a performance, and the Jade Books played the starring role. But how much of this was spectacle and how much was substance? Historical accounts from the Tang dynasty describe coronation rites where replicas of the books, carved from inferior jade but gleaming under torchlight, were paraded before crowds. The originals, if they existed, were likely hidden away, their power too potent for public display, yet their absence only heightened their mystique. Emperors would gesture toward sealed chests or empty thrones, claiming the book's blessing without ever revealing them. It was a delicate dance: admit you lacked the texts and risk appearing illegitimate, claim to possess them outright and invite scrutiny. Better to let the people wonder. The rituals themselves were layered with symbolism. During the Han dynasty, the Feng and Shan sacrifices ceremonies performed atop sacred mountains to affirm heaven's mandate reportedly included readings from jade inscriptions, believed to be excerpts of the divine text. Participants describe the words as burning like stars when spoken aloud, their echoes resonating across the peaks. Whether this was divine energy or clever stagecraft is lost to time, but the effect was undeniable. Witnesses left convinced they'd glimpsed the machinery of the cosmos. Later dynasties grew more audacious. The Ming Emperor Yongle, builder of the Forbidden City, commissioned an entire jade pavilion in his palace complex, its walls inscribed with passages he claimed were copied from the celestial originals. On the summer solstice, sunlight would strike a particular glyph, casting a beam that illuminated the throne. A stunt designed to awe ambassadors and commoners alike. Yet privately, his advisors fretted. The pavilion's inscriptions were likely forgeries, and the real books, if they'd ever existed, remained stubbornly out of reach. What's revealing is how the rituals evolved as the legend faded. By the Qing dynasty, references to the Jade Books became vaguer, their role reduced to a single line in coronation edicts: by heaven's grace and ancient jade. The magic was leaching out, replaced by bureaucratic efficiency. Emperors no longer needed crumbling myths to legitimize their rule, they had armies and tax ledgers. Yet even then, the idea persisted like a ghost. On the eve of his abdication in 1912, the last emperor, Puyi, was said to have whispered a plea to the Jade Guardians for protection. Some traditions, it seems, die harder than dynasties. So were the books ever truly part of these rituals, or merely props in a grand deception, perhaps both? Their greatest power lay in their ambiguity, a blank screen onto which each emperor projected his authority. Whether hidden in vaults or conjured through artifice, they served the same purpose: to transform mortal rulers into living conduits of the divine. And in that alchemy of belief and pageantry, the myth became real enough to shape history. Where there's legend, there's always someone waiting to exploit it, and the Jade Books of Heaven were no exception. Over the centuries, countless forgers, treasure hunters, and even emperors have claimed to possess fragments of these divine texts, each discovery more tantalizing and more suspicious than the last. Take the infamous case of the Jade Scroll of Loyang, unearthed in the 12th century during the Song dynasty. A farmer digging a well supposedly struck stone, only to uncover a jade slab inscribed with glowing characters. Scholars rushed to examine it, declaring it a lost piece of the heavenly library, but the celebration was short-lived. A sharp-eyed librarian noticed the script matched a popular Taoist manual from the previous century, down to a scribble error in the margin. The divine text was a clever fake, likely planted to curry favor with the emperor, who'd offered a fortune for any trace of the books. The motives behind these hoaxes reveal as much as the fakes themselves. For some, like the Song dynasty fraudster, it was about wealth or political leverage, but others sought something far more intangible: legitimacy. In the Ming dynasty, a rebel leader named Lai Zicheng forged a set of jade tablets claiming they prophesied his rise to power. His followers, desperate for a sign from heaven, rallied behind him until a rival warlord pointed out the ancient script included characters invented just decades earlier. The rebellion collapsed, but the pattern endured. The Jade Books weren't just relics, they were psychological weapons, their supposed power enough to sway armies or topple dynasties. Modern times haven't dulled the allure. In 2004, a collector in Hong Kong paid millions for a jade codex allegedly smuggled from a Qin-era tomb. The artifact bore intricate star maps and what appeared to be celestial poetry. But when scientists analyzed the jade, they found traces of modern polishing tools, and the ancient adhesive holding the pages together contained traces of 20th century epoxy. The forger had studied just enough history to mimic the aesthetics but missed the nuances of ancient craftsmanship. What's striking isn't just the frequency of these frauds, but their persistence despite repeated exposure. Why keep forging texts that experts routinely debunk? Because the myth outlasts the skepticism. The Jade Books represent a kind of holy grail for forgers, an artifact so shrouded in mystery that any discovery, no matter how flimsy, will find believers. Even today, online forums buzz with claims of hidden jade troves or decoded prophecies, each new hoax feeding the legend it tries to exploit. Perhaps the most telling detail lies in how these fakes are unmasked. Authentic ancient jade develops a patina called earth skin, from millennia underground, a texture nearly impossible to replicate. Genuine celestial maps would align with star positions from centuries past, not modern constellations. The forgeries fail not because they're crude, but because they're too perfect. The real Jade Books, if they existed, would bear the quiet imperfections of their time, the human hand beneath the divine. And that's the paradox. The harder forgers try to mimic heaven, the more they reveal their own earthly hands. In the end, these hoaxes don't discredit the legend, they deepen it. Every exposed fake whispers the same question: if so many have tried and failed to recreate these texts, what must the originals have been like? The forgeries aren't just lies. They're proof of how desperately, across centuries, we've longed for the real thing. The legend of the Jade Books has seeped into modern storytelling, reshaping itself to fit new narratives while retaining that core mystique that captivated emperors. In literature, they've become a playground for reinterpretation, sometimes sacred manuscripts, other times dangerous relics. Take the fantasy novel The Celestial Codex by Lai Y, where the books are recast as a sentient AI from an ancient advanced civilization. Their jade pages actually date a crystals humming with lost technology. The twist: the divine prophecies turn out to be encrypted climate models predicting Earth's collapse. A far cry from celestial mandates, yet eerily mirroring the original's role as harbingers of destiny. Video games have taken even bolder liberties. In Jade Empire, the books appear as a faction's MacGuffin, their pages granting players temporary godlike powers, floating combat styles, elemental manipulation, but at a cost. Each use drains the in-game world's color, a clever nod to the Taoist balance of yin and yang. Meanwhile, Assassin's Creed Chronicles, China reimagines them as a precursor artifact, blending the series' sci-fi lore with Chinese mythology. Here, the golden script is no longer celestial but alien, the book's part of a larger puzzle left by an ancient, advanced race. These adaptations raise a fascinating question. Why does the myth endure in forms so far from its roots? Perhaps because the Jade Books' essence, forbidden knowledge, the tension between power and responsibility, translates effortlessly across genres. Modern storytellers strip away the jade and gold but keep the books function as mirrors. In the three-body problem, Liu Cixin's Alien Contact Saga, a clandestine group called the Jade Record Society believes humanity's survival hinges on deciphering an extraterrestrial message eerily reminiscent of the book's lost prophecies. The names change, but the obsession remains. Even blockbuster cinema has dabbled in the legend, though often with less subtlety. The Indiana Jones-esque film Tomb of the Celestial Codex, a box office flop, but a cult favorite, turned the books into a supernatural weapon, their pages capable of rewriting reality, a premise that angered historians but delighted audiences hungry for mystical stakes. The film's climactic scene, where the villain's overreach causes the books to dissolve into mist, unintentionally echoes ancient tales of the texts withdrawing from unworthy hands. The distortions reveal more than they obscure. Each retelling, whether respectful or wildly inventive, confirms the Jade Books' symbolic power. They've become a narrative shorthand for the price of enlightenment, a vessel for humanity's oldest question. Can we handle the truths we chase? From pixelated game assets to paperback thrillers, the answer seems to be the same one whispered by emperors and alchemists, maybe not. But we'll never stop trying. The question of whether the Jade Books were real artifacts or symbolic constructs has divided scholars for generations, with theories spanning archaeology, political science, and theology. Professor Lin Wei of Peking University argues for their tangible existence, citing Han Dynasty administrative records that mention jade tablets of celestial origin stored in the Imperial treasury. Her team's analysis of excavation reports from early Imperial tombs reveals niches designed to hold rectangular jade objects matching historical descriptions, though none have been found intact. These weren't metaphorical, Lin insists. Emperors taxed provinces specifically to fund searches for them. You don't mobilize armies for a metaphor. Yet other academics, like Cambridge historian Dr. Jonathan Pryke, see the books as elaborate political theater. He points to the mandate of heaven doctrine, where rulers needed divine validation to justify their authority. Inventing a physical object as proof of heaven's favor was genius, Pryke notes. It's no coincidence that references to the books peak during dynastic transitions, when legitimacy was most contested. His research compares the Jade Books to Europe's Holy Grail, a deliberately elusive symbol that motivated loyalty through pursuit rather than possession. A third camp, led by Taoist scholar Master Huangyi, interprets the texts as esoteric metaphors for enlightenment. In his translation of obscure Ming-era monastic diaries, the Jade Pages represent stages of spiritual refinement, with a golden script symbolizing moments of revelation. You don't read these books with your eyes, Huang explains. You read them through meditation, when the mind becomes clear as polished jade. This perspective aligns with ancient alchemical texts describing the books as interior landscapes, their wisdom unfolding within the practitioner's consciousness rather than on physical tablets. The debate grows thornier when examining regional variations. Sichuan University's Dr. Mei Ling highlights how northern Chinese records emphasize the book's astrological content, while southern texts focus on their moral teachings. This isn't contradiction, it's adaptation, she argues. communities molded the legend to address local needs, whether predicting floods or guiding magistrates. Her fieldwork in Fujian uncovered village rituals where jade book replicas were used in rainmaking ceremonies, proof, she says, that their power lived in collective belief rather than any single artifact. Perhaps the most provocative theory comes from comparative mythologist Dr. Rajan Patel, who traces parallels between the Jade Books and Mesoamerican codices like the Dresden Codex. Both were said to predict celestial events, both were linked to royal legitimacy, and both vanished under mysterious circumstances. Global creation myths often feature lost divine manuals, Patel observes. The Jade Books might be China's iteration of a universal human longing, instructions from the gods misplaced before we could fully understand them. What unites these scholars isn't answers, but the recognition that the Jade Books' true significance lies in their ambiguity. They served emperors as political tools, mystics as spiritual maps, and peasants as symbols of hope, a shape-shifting legend that refused to be pinned down. Whether carved in jade or conjured from longing, their legacy endures not in resolution but in the endless pursuit of meaning. Deep in the ashes of China's most infamous literary purge lies a haunting possibility. What if the Jade Books were among the countless scrolls reduced to smoke when Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the burning of books in 213 BC? Historical records describe bonfires so vast they darken the sky, consuming texts on philosophy, history, and dissent. But nestled within those flames might have been something far more precious, the very text that promised to bridge heaven and earth. The Qin dynasty's destruction of knowledge wasn't just about control, it was an attempt to rewrite history itself. And if the Jade Books were real, their annihilation would have been the ultimate act of silencing the divine. Yet not all secrets perish so easily. Legends persist that loyal scholars hid precious manuscripts in tombs, caves, or even false walls of imperial libraries. The Han dynasty's recovery efforts suggest some texts survived, or at least the hope of them did. Could the Jade Books have been smuggled away before the flames reached them? Consider the recent discovery of the Liai Qin slips, thousands of bamboo documents found in a well in Hunan province, untouched for millennia. These weren't grand philosophical treatises, but bureaucratic records, receipts, memos, inventories, yet their survival hints at how much might still lie buried. If mundane paperwork could endure, why not celestial jade? The fate of imperial libraries adds another layer of intrigue. The Great Library of Alexandria isn't the only one lost to time. China's own Tianluji, the Han dynasty's imperial archive, supposedly housed over 3,000 volumes before its collapse. Later chronicles mention a jade repository within its vaults, though whether this referred to the books or their containers remains unclear. When rebel forces sacked the capital, the library burned for days. But fires are fickle. Some texts, especially those sealed in stone or metal, might have survived underground. Archaeologists working near the old Han capital have found storage pits lined with mercury, possibly meant to preserve organic materials. It's not impossible that the books, if real, still rest beneath the earth, waiting for a spade to strike true. Even more tantalizing are the whispers of secret caches. Taoist monasteries from the Tang dynasty onward claimed to safeguard fragments of heaven's scriptures, though none ever produced proof. A 12th century monk's diary from Mount Qingcheng describes a chamber behind a waterfall where jade leaves turned the air to honey, but modern expeditions found only empty niches. Then there's the curious case of the Forbidden City's underground network tunnels rumored to hold treasures too dangerous to display. In 1986, workers repairing a drainage system uncovered a sealed room beneath the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Official reports dismissed it as a storage space for ritual vessels, but one technician's memoir, published decades later, mentioned green tablets wrapped in silk that vanished into state archives. Coincidence or a deliberate erasure? The most chilling theory isn't that the books were destroyed, but that they were found and hidden again. In 2014, a retired librarian in Nanjing came forward with a stack of wartime documents, including a 1937 inventory from the doomed Nanjing Museum. Listed among items evacuated ahead of Japanese troops was one jade case, contents unverified. The crate's destination, a remote monastery in Gansu province. When researchers tracked down the site, the monks denied any knowledge. Yet locals speak of a midnight convoy in the 1950s when soldiers allegedly took something heavy with the scent of cold stone away into the mountains. Whether lost, hidden, or waiting to be unearthed, the Jade Books' absence has become their defining feature. Unlike other relics, their power grows with each failed search, each near miss. Perhaps that's how celestial gifts are meant to endure, not in glass cases, but in the spaces between what we know and what we dare to imagine. After all, the greatest libraries aren't always made of parchment and ink. Sometimes they're built from the stories we tell in the dark, hoping the next generation might lift the lid. To understand why jade was chosen as the sacred vessel for these celestial texts, we must unravel its profound symbolism in Chinese culture, a resonance that stretches back over 8,000 years. Jade wasn't merely a stone, it was a living embodiment of cosmic harmony, its cool touch believed to pulse with the heartbeat of the earth itself. Ancient texts describe it as the essence of mountains and rivers, a substance forged where geological forces met the breath of the divine. Unlike gold, which symbolized wealth and temporal power, jade carried a quieter, deeper authority, the kind that whispered rather than shouted. Its translucence mirrored the boundary between worlds. Its unyielding hardness represented the unbreakable will of heaven. When craftsmen carved it, they weren't just shaping a mineral, they were revealing a language older than words. The spiritual significance of jade is woven into China's earliest myths. The goddess Nuwa, creator of humanity, was said to have repaired the shattered sky with 5 colored stones, most often interpreted as jade, binding heaven and earth back together. This wasn't just metaphor, it was a blueprint for how the material was perceived. Taoist sages wore jade pendants to align their bodies with celestial energy, while burial suits stitched with thousands of jade plaques, like the one found on Prince Liu Sheng of the Han Dynasty, were designed to preserve the soul's purity in the afterlife. The stone's resistance to decay made it a bridge between mortal existence and eternity, a physical anchor for the intangible. Politically, jade was the ultimate legitimizer. The character for emperor, Chinese letter in Chinese script, is a single vertical stroke intersecting 3 horizontal lines, a stylized representation of jade beads strung on a thread. From the Neolithic Liangzhu culture to the last Imperial dynasty, rulers wielded jade scepters called Kong, and by not just as regalia, but as tools of cosmic diplomacy. These objects, often inscribed with astrological symbols, were used in rituals to communicate with heaven, their shapes mimicking the round sky Bai and square earth Kong. To possess jade was to hold a fragment of the celestial order, a logic the Jade Books of Heaven exploited masterfully. By crafting the divine texts from this material, their creators fused spiritual authority with political theater, ensuring no emperor could claim them without also bowing to their symbolic weight. Culturally, jade's value lay in its paradoxes. It was harder than steel, yet could be polished to a liquid smoothness. It was cold to the touch, yet warmed in the hand over time, a reflection of Confucian ideals where true virtue balanced strength with gentleness. The Book of Rites compares a nobleman's character to jade, unbroken by violence, unmarred by pressure. This duality made it the perfect medium for texts meant to govern empires. Unlike parchment or bamboo, which could burn or rot, jade endured, just as the wisdom of heaven was meant to outlast dynasties. Even its fractures were telling. Ancient artisans would repair broken jade with gold, celebrating its flaws as part of its history. The Jade Books, if they existed, would have carried this same narrative of resilience, their scars testifying to their passage through time. perhaps the most intriguing layer is jade's acoustic dimension. When struck, high-quality nephrite produces a clear, lingering tone, a property that led to its use in ancient musical instruments. The king, a set of tuned jade chimes, was played exclusively in rituals to summon divine attention. This sonic purity wasn't just aesthetic, it was thought to vibrate in harmony with the universe's unseen frequencies. If the Jade Books truly hummed, as some legends claim, their sound may have been a form of celestial communication, a luring call between realms. Modern gemologists confirm that certain jade varieties resonate at frequencies close to those used in sound healing today, an eerie echo of ancient intuition. By embedding their most sacred knowledge in jade, the creators of these texts didn't just choose a durable material. They tapped into a symbol that was personal and political, earthly and divine. To hold the Jade Books would have been to touch the spine of the cosmos itself, a weight no empire could fully bear, yet none could resist trying. And that's the stone's final lesson. Some truths are too heavy for hands, but too luminous to leave buried. What if the words etched into the Jade Books weren't meant to be read, at least not by human eyes? The nature of their script is one of the most tantalizing puzzles. Ancient accounts describe the markings as shimmering like constellations, shifting under the gaze of the unworthy, or glowing with an inner light. These aren't the traits of any known earthly language. Some scholars argue the script was Shangshu, reversed writing, a celestial code only decipherable through divination or meditation. Imagine symbols that rearranged themselves like stars in the night sky, their meaning fluid, adapting to the reader's spiritual clarity. A 9th century Taoist manual even claims the script wasn't visual at all, but vibrational characters that resonated in the bones when traced with a finger, translating wisdom into pulses of energy rather than ink. Yet others propose a startlingly practical theory. The books might have used an early, now lost form of Chinese proto-writing. Before oracle bones, before bronze inscriptions, there were the Taowan mysterious glyphs found on Neolithic pottery and jade artifacts, some dating back over 5,000 years. These symbols, cruder than later script, bear an uncanny resemblance to descriptions of the Jade Books, simple yet profound markings. Could the divine text have borrowed from humanity's earliest attempts to capture thought in stone? Archaeologists point to the Shangshu culture's jade Kong tablets, etched with geometric patterns that some believe encoded ritual knowledge. If the Jade Books existed, they might have refined these primal symbols into a language bridging the mortal and divine. Then there's the argument for pure symbolism. The Yijing I Ching, with its hexagrams, demonstrates how abstract lines could convey cosmic principles without conventional words. The Jade Book script might have functioned similarly, less a language than a visual calculus of the universe. A Song Dynasty alchemist's diary describes a dream where he read the books by meditating on their patterns, each stroke triggering visions of celestial mechanics. This aligns with Taoist Futu, diagrams believed to channel energy through shape alone. Perhaps the books weren't meant to be read linearly, but absorbed, their power unlocked through intuition rather than literacy. The most enigmatic theory comes from comparative mythology. Across cultures, divine scripts share eerie similarities. The Norse runes Odin plucked from the world tree, the Enochian alphabet of angelic lore, all described as living writing that acts rather than informs. The Jade Books' shifting glyphs might belong to this tradition, a script that doesn't describe reality but alters it. A Ming Dynasty folktale warns of an emperor who ordered a sage to translate a single page, only for the sage to age centuries in moments, his hair whitening as the characters rewrote his flesh. Whether myth or metaphor, the message is clear. Some languages aren't tools, they're forces. So were the letters on those jade pages divine code, ancestral cipher, or something beyond both? The answer might lie in their very elusiveness. A script that reveals itself to none would be the perfect safeguard for heaven's secrets, unreadable, unforgettable, and forever just out of reach. Among the most enduring mysteries of the Jade Books are the whispers of prophecy claims that these celestial texts didn't just guide emperors, but foretold the rise and fall of dynasties with chilling precision. Ancient chronicles describe passages that mapped out everything from peasant revolts to celestial omens, as if the books were less manuscripts than mirrors reflecting the future. But here's where history blurs. Were these prophecies part of the original lore, or clever additions by later rulers desperate to justify their reigns? The earliest references to prophetic content appear in Han Dynasty records, where scholars wrote of the books predicting 3 centuries of fire before a golden age ascends from the west. Remarkably, this aligns with the chaos of the Three Kingdoms period and the subsequent stability of the Tang dynasty. But skeptics point out these accounts were written centuries after the fact, leaving room for hindsight to dress itself as foresight. It's the historian's dilemma: when does a prophecy become a self-fulfilling narrative crafted to legitimize the victors? Taoist texts add another layer. The Daozang canon describes the Jade Books containing star script, a language where constellations formed sentences that shifted with time. One passage allegedly warned of a black chariot in the sky preceding Imperial collapse, a phrase some link to the comet witnessed before the Tang dynasty's fall. Yet no original fragments survive, only commentaries written generations later. This raises the question: did later mystics retrofit cosmic events into the legend, like astrologers connecting dots after the fact? The most compelling evidence might lie in what isn't said. Earlier Shang dynasty oracle bones used for divination show no mention of the Jade Books prophecies, despite their obsession with forecasting. If the texts truly held future knowledge, wouldn't China's earliest seers have revered them? Their absence in these records suggests the prophetic aura may have grown over time, like ivy climbing a wall of myth. Yet the counterargument is equally fascinating. Emperors from the Zhou to the Ming invoked the book's predictions during crises, treating them as living oracles. When the Mongol Yuan dynasty fell, rebel leaders circulated copies of a Jade prophecy foretelling their victory, a document later exposed as a forgery. But the fact it worked reveals the potency of the idea. Whether the original texts prophesied or not, their legend became a canvas for ambition, where power wasn't just taken but written into destiny itself. Perhaps the truth lies in the nature of prophecy. The Jade Books didn't need to contain the future to shape it. Like a compass guiding a ship, their real power wasn't in predicting storms, but in steering emperors toward them. Where emperors sought the Jade Books for power, secret societies whispered of possessing fragments not for dominion, but for spiritual rebellion. The White Lotus Society, that underground network of mystics and rebels, wove the lost texts into their millenarian prophecies. During the Yuan dynasty, their leaders claimed to guard a single jade slip revealing the true mandate of heaven, one that foretold the fall of Mongol rule. When peasant uprisings erupted, fighters carried banners inscribed with symbols allegedly copied from the celestial script, turning imperial mythology against the throne itself. Historians debate whether these were clever forgeries or genuine relics looted from forgotten tombs, but their psychological impact was undeniable. To hold even a sliver of the Jade Books was to claim divine sanction, a weapon more potent than swords. Taoist sects took a subtler approach. The Shangshu school, centered on Mount Mao, spoke of jade tablets of the inner court, not physical objects, but visionary texts revealed during meditation. Adepts described entering trances where celestial maidens pressed cool jade slips into their hands, the glyphs dissolving into their skin as wisdom rather than words. This mystical tradition reframed the books as interior experiences accessible only to the spiritually purified. Yet rumors persisted of physical fragments hidden in mountain monasteries. A 14th century monk's diary from Wudang Shan mentions a locked cedar chest containing heaven's correspondence, its jade pieces so potent they turned rainwater luminous when placed beneath eaves. Then there were the alchemical brotherhoods. Secretive lineages like the Zhonglu tradition believed the book's true content wasn't prophecies or star charts, but coded instructions for constructing the golden elixir. A Ming-era manuscript titled Jade Flames of the Immortals describes initiates gathering fragments to reconstruct a single page. 7 slips make 1 leaf, 7 leaves 1 petal, 9 petals the lotus of rebirth. The text warns that incomplete reassembly risked unleashing unripe Kai, a force that supposedly turned one adept's laboratory to molten glass in 1532. Whether accident or allegory, the tale underscores how these groups treated the books not as relics, but as volatile technologies. The irony, many emperors persecuted these very sects for hoarding celestial treasures, even as their own courts staged elaborate hunts for the same text. When king authorities raided a White Lotus cell in 1784, they reported finding green stone pieces covered in unreadable script later dismissed as peasant carvings. But the confiscation order specified they be sent to the Imperial Astronomy Bureau, not destroyed. Even skeptics couldn't resist the possibility. What secret societies understood, and rulers often missed, was that the Jade Books' power lay in their incompleteness. A fragment could inspire revolution, a whole text might crush under its own weight. Like shards of a mirror, each piece reflected not just heaven's light, but the longing of those who held them. The hunt for the Jade Books didn't end with ancient emperors or dusty scrolls. It's alive today, fueled by cutting-edge tools and undimmed curiosity. In 2019, a team from Peking University launched the Celestial Script project, combining LiDAR scanning and spectral imaging to survey rumored cache sites along the old Silk Road. Their hypothesis: if the books were hidden, they'd likely be near sacred mountains like Mount Kunlun, where heaven and earth were said to converge. The scans revealed anomalous subsurface chambers in a cliffside near Hotten, but excavation yielded only Tang-era prayer plaques. Disappointing, maybe, yet the real revelation was in the tech itself. Ground-penetrating radar can now detect jade's unique density, distinguishing it from surrounding rock. For the first time, science offered a way to listen for the books beneath centuries of soil. Not all searches are so methodical. In 2021, an independent researcher named Elias Kaufman made headlines by hacking into Qing Dynasty land records, cross-referencing them with wartime confiscation logs to trace a crate labeled Jade Tablets to a derelict warehouse in Chongqing. The building had been demolished in the 1990s, but Kaufman's drone footage showed fresh excavation marks in the foundation proof. He claimed that someone had beaten him to the prize. Authorities dismissed it as relic hunting, but the story went viral, sparking a wave of amateur expeditions armed with metal detectors and ancient star charts. Then there are the fringe efforts. A California-based group called the New Dawn Collective has spent a decade applying AI to decode descriptions of the book's script, training algorithms on oracle bone inscriptions and Liangzhu jade glyphs. Their goal: to reconstruct the celestial language and predict where intact fragments might lie. Critics call it digital mysticism, but in 2023, their model flagged a riverbank in Anhui province as a high-probability site. Local archaeologists found nothing, yet the attempt raises a provocative question. Could machine learning succeed where emperors failed? The most tantalizing lead comes from an unlikely source: space archaeology. Satellite imagery analysis, originally developed to locate buried cities, has identified subtle terrain distortions around Mount Tai that match descriptions of Han-era ritual tunnels. A joint Chinese-German team plans to deploy muon tomography next year, a technique that uses cosmic rays to map voids deep underground. If the books were sealed in a chamber, this could be the key, assuming they weren't moved, melted, or never existed at all. What unites these modern quests isn't just technology, but the enduring belief that some secrets refuse to stay buried. Whether through satellites or shovels, the search continues, not just for jade and gold, but for the line where history becomes legend and legend whispers back. In modern China, the legend of the Jade Books has taken on a new life, no longer just relics of myth, but symbols of cultural identity and political ambition. The government's push to revive traditional heritage has elevated these celestial texts from obscure folklore to emblems of national pride, their mystique repurposed for contemporary narratives. State-sponsored documentaries frame them as proof of China's ancient sophistication, while museum exhibitions showcase jade artifacts labeled Echoes of the Heavenly Library, carefully implying continuity between legend and history. But beneath the glossy presentations lies a charged question. Is this celebration of the past genuinely about cultural preservation, or is it a strategic tool to fuel nationalist sentiment? The tension flares brightest in territorial disputes. When China reclaimed Hong Kong in 1997, a propaganda campaign invoked the Jade Books as metaphors for reunification, lost wisdom returning home. More recently, historical claims in the South China Sea have been bolstered by references to ancient celestial maps, with state media suggesting the books might have once charted these contested waters. Critics argue these connections are tenuous at best, engineered to weave modern geopolitics into the fabric of myth. Yet the tactic works because the legend is malleable. Its ambiguity allows it to serve as both cultural treasure and political cudgel. Academic circles aren't immune to the controversy. In 2018, a Shanghai University paper proposing the books as precursors to Chinese scientific achievement sparked international debate. Western scholars dismissed it as revisionism, while state-aligned historians doubled down, citing the text's alleged star charts as evidence of 5,000 years of astronomical supremacy. The backlash was swift. Research grants investigating the book's technological legacy surged, while archaeologists questioning their physical existence found their work quietly sidelined. The message was clear: some interpretations of history are more equal than others. Even pop culture has been drafted into the service of soft power. Blockbusters like Chronicles of the Celestial Codex portray the Jade Books as China's answer to the Ark of the Covenant artifacts whose recovery would restore national glory. Video games developed with state funding weave the books into storylines where protagonists defend them from foreign looters, reinforcing narratives of cultural resilience. The subtext is unmistakable. These aren't just stories, they're allegories for a rising China reclaiming its rightful place. But the most telling twist may be how diaspora communities have reclaimed the narrative. In Taiwan, independent scholars frame the Jade Books as symbols of shared heritage, deliberately divorcing them from mainland propaganda. Meanwhile, underground artists in Chengdu parody state imagery, painting the books as emoji-laden scrolls critiquing blind nationalism. The legend, it seems, refuses to be fully co-opted. Whether wielded by emperors or politicians, the Jade Books endure because they're mirrors, not just of heaven's will, but of the ambitions of those who invoke them. Their power was never in the jade or the script, but in the way they remind us that the past is never just the past. It's a weapon, a trophy, and a Rorschach test, all depending on who holds the pen. Could the Jade Books of Heaven be something far stranger than celestial wisdom? Could they be artifacts not of gods, but of beings from beyond our world? This fringe theory has gained traction in recent decades, fueled by descriptions of the book's uncanny properties. Shifting scripts that defied known languages, jade tablets humming with unexplained energy, glyphs aligning with star maps too precise for ancient astronomers. Proponents argue these details echo modern accounts of extraterrestrial technology, suggesting the texts were either alien manuals left for humanity or encoded messages from a lost interstellar civilization. The argument hinges on anomalies. Ancient astronaut theorists point to the book's alleged weightlessness, a trait matching UFO reports of anti-gravitational materials, and their glowing script reminiscent of luminescent alien interfaces in sci-fi lore. More striking are the star maps said to be etched into the jade, which some claim correspond to constellations as they appeared tens of thousands of years ago, knowledge impossible without advanced astronomy. A controversial 2012 paper in the Journal of Cosmology even proposed the glyphs resembled the Fibonacci sequence, a mathematical pattern found in phenomena from galaxy spirals to DNA, hinting at a universal code. But how plausible are these claims? Mainstream historians dismiss them as selective cherry-picking. The shifting script could simply reflect the way light plays on polished jade, while ancient star maps like the Dunhuang charts prove Chinese astronomers were far more advanced than we credit. As for the Fibonacci link, critics note the sequence appears organically in nature. Its presence doesn't require alien intervention. Even the humming could have mundane explanations. Certain jade varieties resonate when struck, a property exploited in ritual chimes. The extraterrestrial theory also stumbles on cultural context. Chinese mythology is rich with celestial beings, but these are explicitly framed as part of a spiritual cosmology, not visitors from other planets. The Jade Emperor isn't depicted as an alien overlord, but as a divine arbiter within an interconnected universe. Recasting these figures as extraterrestrials risks flattening a nuanced belief system into a sci-fi trope. Yet the theory persists, revealing less about ancient China and more about modern anxieties. In an age of quantum physics and AI, we project our technological awe onto the past, unable to fathom how primitive cultures might have achieved sophistication without outside help. The irony: by attributing the Jade Books to aliens, we inadvertently repeat the very imperial mindset the texts once countered, the assumption that profound knowledge must come from somewhere else, rather than trusting humanity's capacity to reach for the stars on its own. Whether carved by gods, aliens, or human hands, the book's true power lies not in their origin, but in their endless ability to make us wonder. In the quiet temples and hidden shrines of modern Taoism, the Jade Books of Heaven still whisper through incense smoke, not as tangible relics but as living symbols of cosmic connection. While no mainstream sect claims to possess the physical texts, their spiritual DNA pulses through rituals and teachings. At Beijing's White Cloud Temple, priests conducting the rite of celestial correspondence still invoke the book's wisdom, tracing invisible glyphs in the air as they chant ancient verses. These gestures, passed down through lineages, are said to channel the same divine knowledge the jade pages once held, proof that the book's essence transcends paper or stone. Yet some groups cling to more literal interpretations. In Taiwan's folk religion, secretive jade light societies gather in moonlit clearings, meditating on polished green stones they believe are psychic fragments of the original text. Members describe visions where the books reveal personalized prophecies, a modern twist on the legend's prophetic core. Meanwhile, rural villages in Fujian province maintain an eerie tradition. During droughts, elders place blank jade tablets in mountain springs, praying the celestial ink will reappear as dew. The ritual, unchanged for centuries, blurs the line between metaphor and material faith. Academic Taoism takes a subtler approach. Professor Lai Xiang at Sichuan University notes how contemporary Taoist cosmology treats the Jade Books as encoded within the body's meridians, a spiritual blueprint accessible through Qigong and inner alchemy. This reinterpretation mirrors ancient practices but swaps physical artifacts for embodied experience. At Wudang Mountain, masters teach disciples to read the books by visualizing jade light flowing through their bones, turning the practitioner into a living vessel for celestial wisdom. The most startling revival, however, thrives online. Digital Taoist forums buzz with crowdsourced attempts to reconstruct the book's contents using AI text generators fed with classical scriptures. One viral project, Jade GPT, claims to have decoded 70% of the celestial script by cross-referencing star maps with Tang Dynasty poetry. Skeptics dismiss it as algorithmic pareidolia, but its creators argue they're continuing an unbroken tradition, piecing together heaven's puzzle with whatever tools each era provides. From incense-lit altars to glowing screens, the Jade Books endure because they've become more than objects. They're a language, one that shifts form but never meaning, fluent in the dialects of both mystics and coders. Whether carved in jade or rendered in pixels, their power lies in the same promise that captivated emperors, that the universe still has secrets to share if we're willing to listen. Centuries of searching, countless theories, and still the Jade Books of Heaven slip through our fingers like smoke. What makes their legend so persistent, so tantalizing, isn't just their celestial origins or the empires that chased them. It's the way they embody humanity's oldest obsession, the hunger to hold the unknowable. Whether these texts were real artifacts, political tools, or pure myth, their power lies in the questions they leave ringing in the air. If they existed, who or what deemed us worthy or unworthy to possess them? If they didn't, why did emperors and rebels alike stake their lives on the chase? The unresolved mysteries are as layered as the books themselves. Take the paradox of their descriptions, objects both impossibly heavy and weightless, scripts that shimmer with divine light yet vanish before skeptical eyes. These contradictions defy logic, yet they're too consistent across cultures and centuries to dismiss as mere coincidence. Even the theories about their fate, hidden, destroyed, or reclaimed by heaven, feel less like conclusions and more like invitations to keep searching. The Jade Books refuse to be solved, and that's precisely what makes them immortal. But here's the real magic of this enigma. Unlike other lost relics, the Jade Books aren't just a historical blank spot. They're a mirror reflecting our own era's obsessions. Today's seekers scan satellite images instead of star charts, train AI on ancient glyphs instead of consulting oracles, yet the drive remains unchanged. We're still that kneeling emperor in the dirt, reaching for a truth just beyond our grasp. Whether carved in jade or coded in data, the allure of absolute knowledge, of a cosmic cheat sheet, remains irresistible. So where does the legend go from here? Perhaps the next chapter is yours. Maybe you've stumbled on a fragment of this puzzle, a dusty manuscript, a family story, even a hunch that ties the threads together. Or maybe you're just seeing the mystery anew through the lens of history, science, or sheer wonder. That's the thing about the Jade Books, they're not done with us yet. Every generation gets to ask its own questions, chase its own version of the truth. And who knows, the next breakthrough might not come from a spade striking jade in some forgotten tomb, but from a comment below, a shared idea, a fresh pair of eyes on this ageless riddle. After all, the greatest mysteries aren't meant to be solved alone. They're meant to be passed on like a whisper from heaven itself. If you've made it this far down the rabbit hole of the Jade Books of Heaven, chances are you're just as hooked as we are by history's greatest unsolved mysteries. And guess what? You don't have to stop here. This channel is a treasure chest of forgotten enigmas, from lost libraries to cryptic manuscripts that have baffled scholars for centuries. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a dive into the past's most tantalizing riddles. Coming up next, we're cracking open another ancient puzzle, the Voynich manuscript, a book written in a language no one can read, filled with botanical illustrations of plants that don't exist. Is it an elaborate hoax, an alien dictionary, or a coded recipe for immortality? The answer might surprise you. Until then, drop a comment below. Do you think the Jade Books were real or pure legend? And if they were real, where would you even begin looking? Let's keep the conversation going. History's greatest secrets are hiding in plain sight. You just have to